So we've been talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the public sector versus the private sector. I'll do the private in a minute down here. And we're looking, remember the name of the game, the whole focus is what helps get more productivity. And we're looking at the four classes and how the public sector, and eventually I'll look at the private sector and how that can influence getting more productivity out of each class. So we've kind of talked about the human one a bit already because it had its own section. So public health, having a public health system is a very good way of getting extra productivity. As I've said, like people don't die, people aren't sick. And the public aspect is about availability and accessibility to the whole population. Another important one, which doesn't exist currently but should, is a job guarantee, so we can ensure that everyone who wants a job is able to have one, not like the current system where people are blocked from having work. Laws play a surprising part in all of the productivity in all areas, but just some examples. If you have like laws around drink driving, then you have like the mainstream economics argument often argues that laws are only restrictive and only ever harm the economy. But of course, if you have drink driving laws, then that reduces the amount of accidents you have and the amount of crashes that cause delays on roads. You have less smashed up vehicles and that sort of thing. So laws and increasing tightness of laws can actually help you get more productivity out. So that's a careful one to think about. Often environmental laws help. Like if you let people go and make property developments on toxic soil, then the people in that whole suburb will be sick and they won't feel as well and they'll work more poorly. There's a whole range of laws that come into play that help get more productivity out from human systems. Democracy, that's another one. So having a system where you can have an ability to influence who the people are that are running your society and what sort of policies and decisions they have, and encouraging transparency in your society helps people feel that their society is like just, and therefore they're willing to participate in it more strongly. The public education is also another one. Even like just ensuring a widespread amount of the population, like the whole population, is able to read and write and that sort of thing helps humans work together and cooperate in their systems. I'll move across into technology now. So public education doesn't play that great a part in here. Public health plays a massive part, public education somewhat less, but public education plays a massive role in this one here. It's hard to get people to do good work with technology if they can't read and write. So that extends from primary education to secondary, into tertiary and vocational, so trades and stuff like that. You need all these things to have people with all these skills to help have a good economy. Another one is public research. So as I mentioned before, the public sector is able to bear more risk and able to persist with things that might not have immediate returns for much longer than the private sector is typically willing to. So it's important to have an amount of public research going on. And infrastructure is another important one. It is a form of technology, but is also a thing that enables technology to be developed and to be made more productive. So like a sealed road is a far more productive entity than a dirt road versus this one's all weather. You can travel faster, you can brake more quickly, so it's safer. And it's because its ability to be all weather, it's more predictable. So then you can have companies scheduling things with tighter time frames and that sort of thing. So the whole thing flows a lot. You don't get vehicles being bogged and that sort of stuff. So, and that extends on to all sorts of other things. So infrastructure is a really important thing, help getting us extra productivity in our society. Now, over in renewable and real, there's something that spans both of these, and that is population policy is a thing the public sector can decide on, which has a massive impact upon those two. And another one, particularly for the renewable, for both, laws on resource management is helpful. If you have a fishery and you don't, it's again the private sector and competes and stuff like that, you run the risk of your fishery getting fished out and destroyed. So there's laws on resource management help maintain the productivity. So again, a thing that superficially seems like a restriction and that would harm the economy actually helps it. So this is a careful thing you've got to look out for. Now, it's actually a decision of the public sector to have a private sector, and that's an important decision that helps boost up the productivity of the society. And that kind of falls evenly across them all, but I would say the private sector, its key skill area is in technology. But then, if you have a private sector, and that constitutes like a large part of your economy like it currently does here, then the public sector only has an amount of funding it can have without having taxes. So then taxes are an important part of getting productivity as well, because if you don't have any taxes, then you don't have any of these parts up here. And because it always causes controversy when I talk about taxes, it's not just income, that's just one form. Then you got corporate. Then you got goods and services. And then you've got a whole range of other taxes. I just call them other. It's including at state and local government level. So what the public should be asking is, if you can still have $1 of tax, if $1 of tax is returning greater than $1, so let's just say $1.10, in benefit from increasing the productivity, then the public should be encouraging that to go ahead. If $1 is returning $5, well, that's an utter no-brainer. But as you so you increase your tax, the amount you're going to get returned, $1 is going to probably get down and down and down, like less and less, until finally it's break even. One's only returning one. At that point, yep, I think it's fair. You're sensible not to demand not to be taxed anymore. But until you reach that point, then it's not logical for the public not to have more tax. And I know that's going to be a controversial statement, but I'll leave it in there and I'll see how we go with and what responses I get to it. So then that leaves me a little bit of space down here for the private sector. And the private sector, it's two main things. They spread across the whole area again, much like the taxes did here. It's competition drives it to be better. And I'll spread it across all of them, but it's dominating in the technology section. That's where, this one here is where your private sector is really helpful and really beneficial. And the other one is innovation. And that spreads across all of them, but again it dominates inside the technology area. So that's kind of a description of, in the various classes, what you can do, what you should be doing, what you as a public should be asking your government to do to achieve more, if you're interested in wealth, more wealth for your society, but also more freedoms, more choices, that sort of stuff. And basically giving you a better economy. So that's all I want to talk about on that one for the moment. I've got two more sort of broad topics that you don't ever hear mentioned too much in mainstream. So I'll explain those two, and then that's kind of getting towards a wrap of how the economy works.